This looks like the end of the world. We're heading towards the city of Sumy, 30 kilometers away from the Russian border. The villages are caught between normality and the consequences of war. The war that has been followed by the whole world for more than 2 years. On the side of the road, signs warn of active mines. Cars swerve between roadblocks, but in poor rural areas, the obstacles are made out of old tires. As we head towards the eastern regions of Ukraine, towards the border with Russia, we can see various roadblocks. For example, the ones behind me are just tires. They didn't have the hedgehogs that we see in other places. Our journey to Sumy is interrupted by the latest news.
Russia has carried out one of the deadliest strikes in months.
Poltava city, where this area was attacked by 2 ballistic missiles.
2 ballistic missiles hit
one of the single deadliest attacks on Ukraine.
Poltava, apart from these deadliest strikes on Ukraine.
A huge attack on the city of Poltava kills over 50 people and injures nearly 300 others. We decided to reroute for Poltava, where the situation was indeed as reported by the major international publications, whose correspondents were already at the scene, although press access was highly restricted. The situation was incredibly tense, as new warnings were being issued, a high risk of a recurring attack. Late into the night, rescuers continued to pull people out of the wreckage, the death toll rising every time someone was found severely injured or even dead. Behind me, you can see the building where over 50 people died last night here in Poltava. We cannot film inside, we're not allowed to, but hundreds of people were injured here and 50 died. What happened here is dreadful. We've got about 30 kilometers left to drive until we reach Sumy, and I see a lot of fires in the fields. I don't think it's just fires, they could be attacks, we're not sure, but I see smoke there too. Yeah, so it's definitely a high risk area, that's for sure.
Yesterday evening, like I'm sit with my friends, just like one wow, yeah. So everyone started to call to their like parents, you know, to check everything is okay. After some couple hours, we had information that it's some missile in our university. Was a student actually in the same building some years ago. Russia tried to destroy it, like our university, our infrastructure, like everything. Like they are not people for me actually. Is it an animal? They can check like their messengers, or they're just happy with that. I hate them.
So what we are seeing here is a continuation of attacks on educational facilities and medical facilities in Sumy following yesterday's attacks in Poltava. The kill and injury rate appear to be 0 at this time. However, this is in contradistinction to the massive amount of dead and injured in Poltava. We are witnessing attacks on civilian populations rather than military targets. This is an important moral reflection for people to consider.
Any explosion every day or at night. Sumy is small city, and when explosion, everything listening.
This is the target Russia chose last night. They wanted to cause as much destruction as possible, but this doesn't really make sense because there's no military targets around here. But even though the recent attacks make no sense from a strategic standpoint, Russia is probably retaliating for the Ukrainian incursion into Kursk. We decided to go to the Russian border to see how dangerous this area is. The Ukrainians are in control of more than 1,000 square kilometers into the Kursk Oblast in Russia, bordering the Sumy region we are now in Ukraine. We are now heading in the direction of Kursk. We are not going to get into Russia. We're not going to cross the border. But let's see what life is like there. Let's see how people live in the villages, and let's see how close to the border we can get. The incursion was a strategic one, Ukrainians having no intention to bring Ukrainian civilians on this territory. Near the Russian border, I was warned that the risk of an attack is extremely high. But these territories seem like the edge of the world. The traffic is almost exclusively military, although civilians still live in these villages. In Ukraine, all border crossings into Russia and Belarus were closed at the beginning of the war. However, crossing these borders will be impossible anyways because of the intense bombing. For legal reasons, we cannot show all the images, as the information could put Ukrainians' national security in danger. But perhaps the most important takeaway is that civilians and even children still live in these villages close to the border. Because of poverty, they have no option to move elsewhere. Aren't you afraid to live here? What is your opinion about this war? And you said that they're shooting too, right? You can hear the sirens in the background. It's dark here because in this part of the city there are no lights here in Sumy, and when you hear the alarms like this, you usually have to take shelter. We heard an explosion. Exactly what I was saying. That's exactly what I was saying. Right after the alarm went off, right after the sirens, there was an explosion. Exactly what I was saying. You shouldn't ignore such alarms. That is especially when you are in dangerous areas like the city of Sumy. With the armor next to me, ready to go if required, I sleep fully clothed on the floor here in the hotel in Sumy. This is life, this is wartime Ukraine. Good night. As the navigation systems are jammed and unusable, we hit the road again, still following the attacks, now heading to Kyiv. And that's because on this road, the villages once temporarily occupied by Russian troops hold incredible stories. Stories of loss, of violence, of courage, but also stories of fear.
Страшно, що зробиш? Куди ж діватися? Що буде, те буде.
Don't you probably want to move somewhere else?
А виїжджать, кому ми нужні? Ми нікому не нужні. Ми нікому не нужні. Так?
So what we are seeing is massive destruction of basically a small village. So generally, from what I'm seeing as a foreigner, is a large amount of poverty in the rural areas of Ukraine. The addition of destruction makes life, understandably, much harder.
Intensitatea acestor atacuri a crescut. Numărul victimelor a crescut foarte mult în ultimele 2 luni aproximativ. Putin practic se răzbună pentru incursiunea ucrainenilor în regiunea Kursk. Probabil că acesta este principalul motiv pentru care acum rușii nu mai au nicio limită și folosesc bombe din ce în ce mai distrugătoare pentru a lovi ținte civile din orașele ucrainene.